Hi everyone, to everyone around, all the attendees. Nice to meet you. You can, as we set up, or as this conversation starts, you can drop comments in the comment section, just saying hi, who you are, where you're from, so we get to know the people on this, who are attending this event. All right, awesome. So we're here for another session of Building from Ground Up, an event created by the UK Nigerian Tech Hub with Tech Cabal as its implementing partner. So we're going to have a good time learning from someone who has been in the space for a while, the tech space, female tech entrepreneur. She's already on the call. That's Chi-chi Ekweozor. And so we're going to begin right away. Okay, thank you everyone for coming. So before we get to the conversation, I'm going to start by just saying a bit about this series, what this series is about. So the Building from Ground Up series seeks to bring together founders, entrepreneurs from the UK and Nigeria to share the stories about building, scaling, their startups. And this is very important, because there's so much to learn from different spaces. So the UK Nigerian Tech Hub works to stimulate local digital economies, support inclusive, sustainable economic growth and jobs, build high-end digital skills, and forge innovation partnerships between Nigerian tech sectors and international businesses, which will lead to more trade and investment in the longer term, thereby driving increased productivity and demand. So this is, a very exciting program. And the UK Nigerian Tech Hub, forms a pillar of a broader digital access program, which aims to catalyze digital inclusion across Africa. So looking forward to have a great time here, learning from people, learning from everyone. I see Comfort dropping a message. Comfort is from Abuja, team lead of Safe Haven Consults. Thank you, Comfort. Good to have you. All right, so that's it about that. We're going to jump right straight into the conversation. Like I earlier said, we're going to be talking to Chi-chi Ekweozor. And before Chi-chi says a thing or two, I'd like to introduce her. Okay, so Chi-chi Ekweozor is the founder and CEO of Ascenti, an interactive question board program that helps event organizers to make a personal connection with their audience before, during, and after an event. Chichis is a social media marketer turned front-end developer and software engineer. As a marketer, she's helped organizations like T-Mobile, Arts Council England, Manchester Digital Development Agency, and Puma develop and implement social media marketing strategies. 4 years ago, she decided to tackle the problem of getting questions from an audience up on a screen during a Q&A session, and ended up building the interactive platform at Assenty.com, which has been used by companies as varied as PwC, Pro Manchester, Business Cloud, Newcastle, Startup Week, and more. She also organizes Manchester's acclaimed female tech founder, a monthly meetup that started as Ascenti's launch event and has since become one of the region's foremost communities for supporting, developing, and nurturing female founders, starting in technology and business. So Chi-chi has done a lot, and he's doing a lot. So Chi-chi, nice to meet you. Hi, over to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we have, nice to meet you. Tyro Shonobu from the UK. Yeah, you're right with Chi-chi, the UK. All right, so as we begin this conversation, I'd like to start with key question to Chi-chi. So tell us a bit about yourself, your journey in tech, and how Ascenti was bettered.
Good question. So I studied electronic engineering at York Uni, so I do have development experience and also studied it, but I didn't feel I was a developer. So I was actually more interested in doing music. So what happened was I moved to Manchester when I graduated and started at an Intel capital funded startup, actually. It was a company that was started from the University of Manchester's computer science department. And what they were doing was writing software for making microprocessors more efficient. And so whilst I was there, I had this interest in music, but I wanted to get a very secure job as a developer, as a programmer, because when I was sort of graduating at uni, companies like Yahoo and the dot-com boom was happening. So I thought, you know what, let me have a safe job as a developer, as an engineer, and then do music. It was actually the transition from wanting to actually start a company that supported the music sector, that could allow me to sort of get my record out, that got me on the journey of becoming a developer. And there's lots of twists and turns to it, but that's actually how it started. It wasn't that I set out to do tech, even though I had the tech background. I wasn't confident as a developer initially when I started.
Wow, music, interesting. I didn't see that coming at all. Have any tracks we can listen to maybe later?
I don't do so much these days. I was trying, then at the time I did a lot on the, on the circuit. I was doing some singer-songwriter stuff, playing guitar, singing, writing songs. I don't do that as much now, but actually those, and this might be helpful for some people listening, those initiatives in trying to get a CD out, to get to people. And so I was trying to do the whole thing DIY. So I was trying to like record it and, cut out going to sign with a big major label, because I heard that the deals were just not very good for the musicians. So all those things actually helped my mindset. They really helped my mindset around doing it yourself, learning to code properly. Because I was working as a developer, but it was system on chip design. It was the software that people like Xilinx or Toshiba or Intel would buy for designing microprocessors. You had to have, I remember some people at our team were trying for us to get like a Solaris Unix box. Solaris doesn't even get used anymore for those that are developers. Linux boxes can do all this now. But that's the landscape that I started developing, and it wasn't sort of for the web. So it was very much focused on a very specific use case for development. And so I wasn't a confident person, but trying to put my record out, looking at all the things I had to do, helping with the production of it, helping make my own website to market it, all those things ended up being like good skills to prepare me.
Awesome. Now a bit about Ascenti, how that started. I'm curious, what does that one mean? Ascenti, when I heard it, I'm like, it sounds like Ashanti, but it's Ascenti. So curious what, how that started and what, where the name came from.
Very good question. So in 2015, I was in between roles. So I work as a software developer, like on different projects. You could call it consulting, but there are sometimes gaps in between them. And in 2015, I'd been toying with lots and lots of ideas around distributed programming. So the key thing with what got me on the journey with developing and working as a software developer for my job was that I did this bit as a social media marketer. So the music company, the music initiatives led me to starting a live music video podcast. And the idea was that we were going to get people to sponsor the content we're creating from emerging artists in Manchester. But when I was doing it quite early on, so it was the first live music video podcast on the iTunes store back in the day in Europe. And what ended up happening was I took that content to people like T-Mobile, and I'd say, can you sponsor it? And they would say, what's a podcast? And we have a MySpace page, what can you, there was this disconnect because I was using technologies they were unfamiliar with. So what I had to do was pivot that company to a social media marketing company. So I was teaching people how to use Twitter, how to use Facebook for their businesses. This is like 2009. So 2008, 2009. So it was hard going because the technologies were becoming popular, but they were still quite new. One thing I found time and again doing that was it was easier for me to plan a software application around some of the strategies I was offering to the companies, because if I didn't do it that way, they could actually just hire people to do the social media marketing. So I had some ideas around social commerce, I had some ideas around social media marketing, but I could see that they were better served as products, as software products. That way I would get paid and not, you know, walk out the room and then assemble some freelancers to do their social media outreach, and then that would be me out the picture. So Ascenti came out of that. The church I go to had a conference, and they were asking people to text questions to one person's number, and at the end of the 3-day conference, we would sit down and discuss the questions that were texted. So the volunteer, she was happy to do it. She put a number up on the projector and people sent questions. It was an international conference, so you couldn't really, it was great. It worked because you could tell from the flavor of the questions, you know, where people were from, but you couldn't prioritize them. There was no context for them. So from that, I thought, you know, there has to be a tech solution to this. And so I thought in between my project time, I'd look into this because I was interested in distributed programming and stuff that would work on a web page that would allow lots of people to interact with it on a social network, for example, without the web page suffering, and without latency and all these other problems affecting the user experience. So that was my heart, to create this platform, and I wanted to call it Concur, but that word was taken. I wanted to call it Ascent. But I looked on that just in time. I looked on the App Store for Google and Apple, and there was something on there called Ascenti. I believe they're still on there. I went through all the vowels at the end of Ascenti to find the unique word: Assento, Assenta, Ascenti, Assentai. They're all like not taken apart from. They're all taken apart from the one with a Y that had no digital footprint. You know, I looked it up and it was like nobody used it. So that's why I picked that word. And the idea of the platform was, I wrote it and put it live, deployed it in 2016. And the idea was that you, rather than waiting for the Q&A part of an event to start before you got engagement, you used the platform. It gave you an input URL, a URL with an input box where you could send in questions for speakers. And then latterly, as I developed it with talking to customers, we allowed them to poll people as well. So the product actually was launched and in the market well before the lockdown, and the lockdown completely changed how, you know, things like Zoom do Q&A. Yeah. But in 2016, 2017, it was the only web-based platform that let you do that sort of thing. Others were like app-based. You had to be at the conference, download the app. Essentially, you could see the links on social media and be interacting with the conference before you got there.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very, so Ascenti has no, it was just vibes, right? Ascenti, yeah. Okay, that's cool. No deeper meaning to that.
No.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And you know, you made an important point. So the first time I stumbled, it was 2018. I think I was at the conference in Vienna, and I saw them use Slido, right? Slido, and I was like, "Whoa, this is so simple yet so like it makes all the sense in the world." And it wasn't, and it made a lot of sense. And I was like, oh, why doesn't this like exist? Because I'd never seen stuff like that being used like back home. Typically sending your questions, this and that. You know how rowdy it can be. So it's this little problem that, I mean, people just, you don't think so much about it, but it makes the whole, you know, conversation, the flow of information, instant feedback really makes the event more meaningful. So yeah, that's a very, and I think more recently I've seen a number of other companies offer similar solutions, right? So it's definitely a space that's very useful. I'm curious, I know you said you started social media early on. What was it like? And that was when people were, I remember, you know, parents back then used to be like, hey, what's that? That's not real. Like social media is not, like this is the real world. Yeah, and now it's changed because, you know, certainly many of them are now on Facebook and WhatsApp, right? Well, people have moved on in a sense. So I'm curious, what was that like? I guess talking to people. Did you have to convince people, or were you only working with people who were certain about the importance of social media?
That's a brilliant question. So, when I started out, I went to a marketing conference and then made sure I spoke to one of the speakers there who happened to be like head of marketing at T-Mobile, and in the UK, T-Mobile doesn't exist anymore. It's now part of a bigger group called EE. So that kind of dates everything back. But he was the person that was in charge of all the billboard marketing, all the TV ads and stuff for T-Mobile. So I went and spoke to him, made sure to arrange a meeting to present this. At the time, I was doing Real Fresh TV, which is the company I started from doing the software development job as a graduate. Actually, I left the graduate job to start this live music video podcasting business. And so I basically managed to get a meeting, and I said, look, we're making this content. It's fresh, emerging talent from Manchester. We've got these people who are on the cusp of being signed. You're a cool brand. Why don't you sponsor us, basically? And they were like, well, he was like, well, we've got a MySpace page. We spent at the time, MySpace used to charge £150,000 to brand agencies in the UK to have a MySpace page. So he's like, yeah, we're cool. We've got a MySpace page. And they also did like a music show in the UK called Transmission. For those that may remember, it was T-Mobile's branding was pink. So it was this music show that was branded fully pink that would have like up and coming music artists. And it was there in the space alongside people like later with Jules Holland, who's like a respected sort of jazz musician who organizes music shows where, you know, famous musicians, Grammy Award winners would come in and jam with him and sing with him and then present their music. So Transmission is the name of the T-Mobile version. It was a lot lighter. They had like pop stars. But what he said to me was like, we don't really know what a podcast is. We've got a MySpace page, but really what you're saying to us, we can't see the urgency of. And that's to your point, Daniel. It was a little bit too early, but he did say, come and teach our team. So what I got out of that was a workshop with their team. And that's why I pivoted the company to doing social media strategy and marketing, because you could see that people felt it was something they needed to know. But unless they were pushed towards it, like if you're marketing to youth, you've got T-Mobile's brand in the UK was very much kind of your first mobile phone, prepaid kind of packages and stuff. So for their demographic, they needed to know about people that would listen to podcasts in the UK and possibly around the world. At the time, Apple's adverts were very much that silhouette of the person with an iPod with the cable in the ears. It was always like a silhouette with someone dancing and 1,000 songs in your pocket. So they knew that what I was doing was related to their demographic, but it was hard going. So yeah, it's hard going at the start of technology, but there will be people that listen, and it's really about learning how to transact that. And I didn't really know how to transact that. I was someone that was a graduate engineer learning business. I didn't really understand how to transact that.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, you made some headway and eventually seemed like you got some traction from social media marketing, right?
Yeah. So it helped demonstrate what I understood. It helped build my network. And I guess a big thing about what I'm sharing today is about the value of your process and the network you have now. So it was through doing social media marketing and basically setting up a stall in Manchester and helping organize their social media surgery so that agencies would, digital agencies, marketing agencies would start to use me to learn about what to do with, like combining, you know, a podcast or a blog platform and Twitter marketing and LinkedIn marketing for their customers. That helped make a name for me, in a sense, for Refresh TV. And I was able to do training courses out of it. And it was those developments, teaching people about the social capital you get on Twitter and social capital you get on LinkedIn, that made me see when I came on to doing Assenty, I was like, this has to be a social first type platform. This has to be used to engage people around an event and Q&A around an event by involving the speakers on social media. So that's the link right there.
Okay, awesome. That's very insightful. And then you switched. I get the sense that it was a natural evolution, switching from social media marketing to software. You already had the software, but moving to Ascenti, then you sort of did less of that and more of this. I know you explained it, but what influenced the decision? Is it just a natural evolution, it made sense to do this, or because you are leaving something that was it's still thriving right now to be social media marketing, even though the space is very arguably more crowded than it was back then.
Yeah, no, I'll fair questions, fair comments. So the big thing was, with hindsight, I can see I had a unique selling point in that the things I was talking about, things I was selling, were new at the time. But I was conscious that some people would come along to my training courses and then offer a similar service, like a little bit after. And so I felt I couldn't protect my knowledge as a strategist or a marketer. And that's a battle, I guess, for people that do consulting or marketing consulting. But I felt if I had products that were software products that actually had some sort of e-commerce linked into the way they functioned, I could protect my ideas. And that was a transition. So I actually started by freelancing. So I went from doing C++ and shell programming and wasn't very confident to being like, okay, I can make my websites. I can set up a WordPress website. But for some of the people I'm working with, they want a bit more functionality with WordPress. So I did a plugin, and then I started applying to jobs that needed WordPress developers, freelance roles. So I transitioned it by becoming a freelance developer. And that's literally the journey I took until I was able to find the time to build something that I wanted to build.
Okay, that's good. I get the point about, I mean, it's easier to arguably like just attend a workshop and replicate a software, a product, you know, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, what was one of the earliest problems you faced when you started with Ascenti, and how you advise other startups that might be dealing with similar issues?
Very, very good question. One I'm dealing with or thinking about a lot now. I use, for people that are familiar with software development lifecycle, there's different approaches now. You can do waterfall development or you can do agile. So waterfall is where back in the day, you might have learned at university, you do the requirements, you turn them into specifications, and then you start to create a product, and then you test it, and then you release it. Everything is linear, happens one step at a time, one after the other. That's what I did with Ascenti, because I thought I identified a problem. Don't do that. Don't do that. Work with the people that need the solution that you have. So agile methods, you know, doing things where you've got the tiniest MVP and you're getting information from your potential user base to improve that product. That's the way to go. So how do you start? You've got free-ish platforms that allow you to start from the get-go. You've got social platforms, you've got Twitter, etc. You've also got things like HubSpot, who will give you a free trial. And the idea here is that you create a landing page, you describe what you're about to solve, the problem that you're solving, and then you engage people either by a focus group or in some closed way that is not public initially until you validate the problem. And as you go through that process, you'll be able to work with them around pricing for the product. This is what I'm advising is very much around tech products, but it might apply to other sectors. But yeah, don't build anything unless you've identified that it solves a problem. Don't build anything. Don't write any code. Otherwise, you'll spend a lot of money and get very frustrated.
That's awesome. That's ever relevant. So follow up to that. So I came across, a tweet about, startup technical founders hiring whether they need to hire CTOs as chief technical officers or not, right? It's often a dilemma because you can do it yourself, right? I mean, why hire someone else? What do you think about that? I guess in terms of, you have other people working with you. It's not like.
Good. So the biggest cost in tech startups is the development time. If you can code and you've proven that there's a need for the solution that you're embarking on, definitely start doing it yourself. That's going to be the quickest way to get an MVP. And quite often, a lot of your validation, traction-wise, even if it's just a clickable thing, even if it's not fully working end to end, a lot of the validation with investors, with people that might want to to work with you comes when they see something they can work with. But having said that, you don't have to be a developer to be a founder. I found this from running female tech founder events. A lot of the female founders that I've sort of become aware of, and part of my network, or I'm part of their network in Manchester and around the UK, a lot of them don't code. A lot of them had ideas. They project managed creating an MVP. Sometimes the MVP was like a PDF document with some knowledge, and then they turned that into an app eventually, and they built built-in features by working with an outsourced team. So there's a lot of work with teams based in India, for example, for creating apps. There's certain types of problem solving that they don't need any specific tech stack for them to be delivered. So you don't necessarily need to have someone with Go or Rust programming skills to build certain types of tools and for it to be a product. So I would say it's a funny one. I would say if you can program, it is a massive advantage, because as soon as you have an idea, tech idea, you want to bring it to life. But don't let it stop you as long as you can validate the need.
Yeah, awesome. So what I heard you say is that definitely it's a huge cost hiring other people, and if you can do it yourself, it makes sense to do that for starters, at least to validate the product before you're able to get some traction and to get other people on. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Totally. Just to
sure.
that. So I was bootstrapping Ascenti as a developer with some marketing experience. If I had to hire people, it would not have happened. I basically had to like go hungry a lot and write the code and go through quite a lot of financial duress to get it to market, to develop it and deploy it. And I'm sure it's a typical story, I guess, for a lot of people who are not networked into sort of the communities around investment and fundraising. And to be honest with you, it's a typical thing for a lot of female founders around the world, in the UK as well, and also people that are not white, so non-white people of color in the Western world. We just don't know the networks yet. We're not familiar with those networks. It's changing, but if you had to rely on those networks, which expect you to have a little bit of traction before they back you, you're not going to get anything made. It's really difficult. And that the biggest cost in your cash flow forecast or your planning for the investors is going to be the development.
Yeah, that's a good one. I go to the next question. I see some people are already sending in questions. If you have any questions, please send them, drop them in the Q&A box. Yeah, that's it. Now to the next question. Someone's asking, one of the questions sent in by attendees was, how can startups that have have high visibility, top-notch visibility with a low budget? How can they do that?
Very good question, and it's very pertinent, because the things that are being solved, especially with the advent of no code and other things, the problems that are being solved through web applications is just multiplying all the time. I think this is where your connection with your audience is really important. Like, you have to, I would say, rather than focusing on marketing en masse to get customers, market to a group of people that are either part of your focus group or people that are early adopters. Market by that, I mean promote and engage with them, and have a connection with them that they can use to talk about your product, rather than you marketing en masse. So with Ascenti, I had, when we started, Slido didn't have their, they now have this thing, which kind of came from what we were doing at Ascenti, which is where they will give you a link and an event code for you to access your Slido page outside the app. When Ascenti started, Slido was just an app that was actually pivoting from being a slides app, a PowerPoint sharing app. So when social media was starting, there was apps for Twitter, there was platforms for sharing conversations like Twitter, there was social media profiles on things like Facebook and MySpace, and then there was photo sharing sites like Flickr, and Slido was a PowerPoint app basically, and
really?
that's why they called Slido. They had to pivot to engagement.
Yeah, I also wondered why was this Slido?
Yeah, that was that. I remember back in the day, I remember hearing about them when they were very, very early as a startup. So I guess what I'm saying is it's very hard to market to the wide world when you haven't identified the main USP for what you're producing, and they haven't validated that for you. So you'll literally be throwing good money after bad, like doing Google ads or LinkedIn ads. I would say what some of the things I'm hearing as far as marketing and growing a company now is if you've got some good product knowledge, then and you can create a very, very short landing page to demonstrate that product knowledge. Turn that into a waiting list. So create a landing page, say this is what you're offering, and then drive traffic to that landing page from places like LinkedIn using targeted advertising to people that would use that product. So this is very much B2B. You might be making a marketing product, and it might be more skewed to like UK audiences, but use your networks basically. Use your networks, but use them to validate what you want before you go out, because otherwise it's very hard to cut through the clutter. There's a lot of noise.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. That's very useful. Just to go back, this question takes us back a bit. Person asking, why did you decide to become a software engineer? Why that route? Why?
So it's a good question. That I was born in Nigeria, and then we moved when I was 14. I remember when I was 8 or 9, my mom was like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I was like, "I want to be a musician." She's like, "Yeah, that can be your hobby." And I'm so grateful I listened to her, because I was like, "All right, I'll be a doctor," because my mom's a doctor. But I didn't like the smell of hospitals in Nigeria or anywhere else. So I was like, when I came to doing GCSE, so we'd moved to the UK, and I was basically doing exams that you do before you start doing A levels. And one of the things that I decided that I would prefer to do was actually something related to architecture. So we were at a parents teachers evening. My dad and he went to parents teachers evening, and we at GCSE I did some subjects like design and technology. For those that are UK based and might be familiar with that, this is alongside maths, English, French, blah 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 blah, the other ones. But with DT, my DT teacher, he basically said to my dad when he was speaking about what I could do at A level, he said, "Look, architecture in the UK is an all boys club. She's going to struggle." And he was saying this to my dad in the 90s. My dad was like, we should listen to what he's saying. And so I was like, okay, design and technology, electronics is what I picked actually. And the reason I did it was I liked taking things apart. I liked Lego and stuff like that, but I wasn't on the route to becoming an engineer. I just thought this is something I enjoy. And so based on his advice, I thought I can do engineering. And I went through all of them. I have an uncle that's a civil engineer. I was like, I don't like that. Mechanical, it was either going to be mechanical or electronic based on what we actually did in that class at the age of 16, doing GCSEs. And so that's what got me on the route of electronic engineering, because someone said I would struggle as a Black girl studying architecture in the UK at degree level. And basically, I feel fortunate because my parents could have got me to do medicine or study the high grades to do, dentistry or something like that. But they allowed my interest to sort of progress. And that's why I started engineering.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So you could have as well turned out to be an architect, or well, I mean, a musician. That's still in the works. It could still come. It could still come up later, right?
Yeah, I played music at church, so yeah, you never know.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, when I was younger, I wanted to be a footballer. It's not too late, I guess, but it happens. Yeah, so this question, I think you've touched on it, but someone's asking, how did you get the courage to turn your idea to business? Yeah, I guess that's Ascenti, right? And yeah, maybe I guess having the skills maybe made it easier, but curious is more than that.
Yeah, this one is probably more aligned to sort of personal faith and conviction and stuff. I felt that it was something I should do as a calling. It was very hard. It was a very, very difficult transition because to actually create something onto the website that worked took 6 months. I thought I was gonna, I started out, I registered the domain name, I think it was a couple of months in early 2016. Created the company on Company's House in the UK, February 2016. And I was doing it because I was going to launch it at a conference. There's this conference that was going to happen in Manchester that year, where Steve Wozniak, who's a co-founder of Apple. So he was the guy that built the actual Apple computer while Steve Jobs was doing all the selling. They'd managed to have this business startup conference happen in Manchester and have him as a head, like the keynote speaker. And there's a lot of buzz around the event. And what I was going to do was I was going to launch Assenty at the event because that's what Twitter did. So Twitter launched at South by Southwest 2007. And what they did was one of the founders, I don't know if it was Jack or Jack Dorsey or somebody else, he stood on the stage in a room that's full of investors and invited them to try out Twitter. He was demonstrating Twitter and they were signing up on Twitter as he did his little pitch. So I thought I'll do that with Ascenti, we'll get the product working and then they can ask me questions through the platform. The event was in April. By April, I wasn't even ready. I wasn't even ready. So I launched, we launched in August, because I was writing all the code, doing all the design, trying to keep body and soul together. And I have to be honest, it was family support that helped me. It was a very difficult time financially because I couldn't do other work and do it. That's the route I took. And it was very, very, very risky process. Long story short, it launched in August and all you could do was send questions. You couldn't do anything else. You can moderate them, you can delete them, you can do polls. It was just the minimum of having gone through, you couldn't even pay, you could pay for it. But at the time, I didn't think through my pricing strategy. So I launched a product, I made sure that there was it supported everything that a platform does from multi-tenancy. So you could create an account in there, you could create a question board, you could be billed for the question board. I had to write all those bits together. It was very, very difficult. And with hindsight, I didn't validate that problem well enough before I did all that. But yeah, that was the initial steps in 2016 around creating the product.
Wow, and you did this all by yourself?
Yeah. So I did I picked the colors because I'd been applying for a contract role, a freelance role, and one of the things they gave us to do as a technical test had some icons in it, and I liked the green of the icons. I thought, oh, green Nigeria, yeah. So I basically modified one of the icons into Ascenti's logo, did the whole thing with Ascenta, Ascentu, Ascenti, Ascente, Ascenti.com, so registered the domain name. I was just really, I felt very confident that because under the hood, I was using a software program, a programming language called Elixir that allowed for massive fault tolerance and concurrency. So under the hood on the platform, it actually has the same virtual machine as is running on WhatsApp. So you can, if anybody wanted to, you can sign up onto a question board, and if 1 million people post questions on that page at once and then like them or respond to them, the page wouldn't fall over. It's doing things by WebSockets, but it's also got a platform that's very fault tolerant. So to you, it wouldn't look like the page crashes. There'll be other things in the background that mitigate that. So I was so confident about the fault tolerance of the platform and what it could do, that I thought if this hits the big time, it's a big deal. And I was just convinced that it was something I was meant to do. So that's why I did it.
Okay, awesome. Wow, really super. You're superwoman. So this, now we're moving to the section, Q&A section. Clifford, I see you asked a question in the chat section. You can move it to the Q&A so we can answer. The first question I'd like to start with is, this person, anonymous, is asking, how do you as a startup owner combine your 9 to 5 with building your business? I think that you did a bit of other things while you were building it. And there's also another question I was sent earlier, which is how to combine startup and also your personal, your lifestyle. I know you said you play music in church, right? You have a life outside of your startup. So yeah.
Yeah, so no, it's a very good question. It's just, I think it's going to be an eternal question for everyone. Everyone that wants to be a startup, everyone that has ideas, because that's the other thing you'll learn. You'll always have ideas and you'll always refine them. So you have to decide how to do it in a way that's amenable for like normal life for you to progress. Because for a long time I was battling all this by myself. And some would argue that I made some decisions that would have put life on hold for time. In that process, but I would say you can mitigate it a couple of ways. It's going to cost you time. You just have to prepare for that. I would say you have to work out what works best for you. So if you find that you're able to do things outside your working hours, working from home because of the lockdown has helped massively in the UK, but it's not the same in Nigeria. I know that. But if you're able to do things in evenings or weekends, fab, go for it, because that will help you. But if you find that you're the sort of person that has to take time out to commit to something, then you have to factor your life, like engineer your life to support that. So it's worked out that I work mostly as a contractor or consultant, however it's expressed. So I work on projects for 3 to 6 months, and then they might end, or I'm gonna have to go and find another one. And even though it can be uncertain, it allows the headspace to go, okay, I'm just doing 3 months of writing the polling feature for Ascenti, or just doing 3 months of trying to do more engagement with event agencies to see what we need to do the platform for them to use it. There's no easy answer to it. There's no easy answer to it. It takes time. So if you're not able to commit to it because you have to work, everybody has to work. I would suggest sometimes the easiest way to get most progress is to commit some time, 2 weeks, set out to achieve something in 2 weeks, and just do that thing in 2 weeks, and then move on to normal life. So that you get something you can actually show people. That's been the biggest benefit, I think. Once you've actually done all the hard work, more people are able to join you on the journey. So don't stop that happening because you haven't got an afternoon or an evening to commit every week.
Yeah, thank you. That's very useful. What you just said is, I mean, you're going to have to put in a lot of time to somehow find a way, either by taking weekends and evenings, or maybe going or using your leave period, for example, to work on it to gain traction. Yeah, that's very useful. The next question, thank you, Clifford, for moving your question to Q&A. Before I ask this, Miracle, I see you have a question. If you would like to answer this live, just indicate and we'll bump you up so you can ask your question live. So Clifford's question is, when is the right time in the life cycle of a startup to raise funds from angel investors or venture capitalists? And interestingly, we never really, in all your talk, doesn't talk about raising money. So I don't know if you raise money or not, it's fully bootstrapped. So that's two questions in one.
Very good question. And it's, so I will say all that happened with Ascenti, all the toil of 2016 and 2017, I was evicted, people. It was a hard thing, but all that toil of that time helped me create a network that now allows me to think about that process of fundraising and speaking to investors. And I'm grateful I didn't do it this way around, because what I learned is that process involves you being able to keep body and soul together anyway. I heard it early on, like you always got to be raising when you start raising. If you go down that route to start a company, they'll give you some seed funding. You can pick whatever currency that you want. It will be enough maybe to get you just to focus on it for a year. But in that, you might build a team, you might have a project administrator, you might have another developer, but then now you have payroll to think about. And so 6 months into it, you'd be like, I need to make sure that within the next 6 months, we've got enough to allow my project administrator and my, mid-level developer to keep working for me. So you have to go and start fundraising. And in that process, you talk to a lot of investors, you present your company, the projections, what you're planning to do. It's not easy, especially if you haven't, it's worth having traction, having validated a problem to do it. It's hard everywhere in the world. I'm sure it's hard in Nigeria. It's hard in the UK. It's hard in the UK for women. It's hard in the UK. So I'll give you a statistic. Less than a penny I think it's a penny from every pound goes to a woman founder in the UK. This is the United Kingdom. If you wanted to look at...
So context, how many pennies are in a pound? So people know.
100.
Okay.
100.
So it's like almost an error.
Yeah, so if you wanted to look at it, for women that are not white and English, or from whatever part of the UK, it's less. It's not even a percentage of a penny. It'll be probably like a shilling or less or something from back in the day when they used those. The percentages are very small, and it's just because what it is it's visibility. It's not. I don't see it as like they don't want to support Black founders, blah blah blah. I don't see it as that, because there's no point having that attitude. I personally think it's visibility. There's not enough in the pipeline, and I can give you a valid reason for this. When I started Ascenti in that 2016, 2017 difficult years, I got to actually pitch the product at it's now called Rising Stars, but then it was called Northern Stars. It's now part of Tech Nation, which is your colleagues at DCMS who helped organize this will be familiar with Rising Stars and Tech Nation. They are the part of the government that supports the ecosystem for tech in the UK. At the time, there were mostly two different organizations, and the one that organized the award I'm talking about was called Tech North. So at one point in 2018, Tech North became Tech Nation. But I got to be one of the 20 people that presented at Northern Stars 2017, which was basically the North's tech startup competition. I was the only woman. There were different types of companies. And what one of the judges said to me on stage was like, your problem here is that the pipeline for women is just limited. I didn't get through. Praise God I didn't, because it was, I just didn't have the capacity to actually win that sort of competition, to be honest with you. In terms of if you won, you had to go to this massive, I think it wasn't TechCrunch, it was something similar to TechCrunch. So they paid for you to go to TechCrunch. It was amazing. And you took your company and you presented there and you did it for 2 days. And you got networks and leads from that. I was barely able to pay my rent. I got to the event and I pitched and it was great and I got some really good feedback. But the reality was keeping body and soul together, writing the platform, trying to find customers was so hard that if I'd won that, I don't think I could have serviced that type of success. That was reality. I'm pleased I didn't. It was annoying at the time, but that was the argument there. There's just not enough women visible. The same thing. There's not enough people who have gone through the process as a Black founder or a female founder in tech. So you kind of have to prepare for that if you're going to go purely down the tech investment funding route, because you're proving something that hasn't been seen a lot. That's a big thing in the UK. It might be similar in Nigeria. I don't know what the ecosystem's like.
Yeah, thank you. So it's basically saying it's not all that rosy over there, right?
Yeah.
Just to clarify, what did you say?
Sorry, I meant to add, you're asking them to lend you, what you're asking them to give you money, and it might be different in the US because angel investing, seed investors, they're established, and obviously the multiples that people have gotten from investing in Facebook or Uber or whatever, they're more established. But here, it's a network of people. Some of them don't have a lot of money to invest in terms of compared to a VC company. So they're putting some of their savings in you. So you have to be able to prove that money will make a return. And if you don't have to borrow the money, don't do it. It's hard.
Yeah. So you're just to be clear, you're still bootstrapping?
No, it's a good question. No. There's things, you're absolutely right. So there's things that Assenti's doing and bootstrapping. And there's things that I've identified as other products that I might develop. And those, I'm not doing them like I did Ascenti. I'm doing them looking at working with a network, learning, going through the process of creating a pitch deck, becoming investor ready, and then presenting it to investors. I'm starting that journey as well. But what I'm saying is, you kind of have to be able to sustain that kind of journey. And some of the things I'm doing is I'm not doing it just because they will give you X thousands of pounds to grow a team to bring a product to market. It's the network. What I learned from doing Ascenti was I had a good idea. The technology was pretty good, pretty unusual. It still works. It doesn't require a lot of maintenance. But because I didn't have a network, I couldn't market it to users and to people. So what Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey or other founders did in being part of the Silicon Valley sort of ecosystem was the network of people that would be able to say, all right, okay, have you heard, for example, for Jack Dorsey's example, come and pitch us South by Southwest and just present your product. We have to have bloggers in the room. They'll talk about your product. It's the people that other people know that is valuable in investment. It's not just their money. Especially for marketing. This is your marketing question.
Yeah. That's a good one. I mean, you've made it this far, right? That's very commendable. Yeah, Miracle, are you able to ask? Yeah, she's here now. So yeah, you can ask your question.
All right. I asked that if looking for apprenticeship programs in tech companies is like the best move as a startup programmer. I just want to know if that's the best move. I know a lot of people that enroll for internship programs, and from there they build this sort of network and grow from there. And there's some people who don't like enroll for internship, they just like spend time to program and code in their own space. So I want to know which is the best move to make as a startup programmer.
Very good question. I would definitely could. The word apprenticeship and software programmer just fits it very well, because in the UK, the landscape is if you're doing an apprenticeship, you're often doing things like maybe skills around maybe hairdressing, dog walking. I'm being a bit slightly facetious there. A little bit, but with programming, you have skills that you can actually earn money from. So I would say developing your CV so that you can actually freelance is the way to go as soon as you can. And by freelancing, it means you can look on job websites. Fiverr might have jobs related to programming on them, Fiverr with 2 hours. There'll be similar platforms you might have heard of around trying to find work done on a project. Those are the things. So Fiverr is the one that comes to mind, but there's other platforms that let you basically create a profile and then apply to work to help someone develop a website or to help someone finish an app. And I guess the key things I'd suggest is try and learn the programming languages that relate to that kind of problem solving, and then try and earn money doing that. You have to do some research. I couldn't off the top of my head tell you what you would for having that skill set, but I know platforms like Scrimba, Udemy, they're very, very good for learning programming to become a front-end developer, for example. So those are very valid. That was what I kind of did. I just didn't have those platforms. I was able to start helping people with WordPress websites and things like that, and then progressed my programming skills to other languages. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Miracle. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, thank you. That's very insightful. I think what I got was, it's one thing to internships sort of mean that you have to wait for a door to be opened, right? You're going to a company, but then freelancing is pretty much more, it's a wider door. I mean, beyond even going on site, family and friends, right? Hey, let me help you build your site. right? And from there, even though they might haggle a bit on price because family and friend discounts, but eventually, something will come out, and then by building that, you can, instead of someone asks them, "Oh, who did this for you?" and from there, ripple effects, right? I probably had this thing too at building sites with WordPress, right? So, but now it's on hold. So, I mean, hopefully, yeah, but that's a good one actually. Thank you for that. And I know there are other questions related to that, about how someone can make there's another question related to that. How can someone make transition to tech without prior knowledge, like building a tech-oriented startup? I have a few thoughts, but hey, let's speak out to this.
Yeah, good question. So I guess they're not necessarily wanting to program. They're not necessarily wanting to write the software. And it's not impossible. I know people who are, a lot of the female founders that I'm familiar with their story in Manchester at least. I'm the only one that codes of all of them. And some of them, they've raised, one or two of them have raised like over £1 million. So I remember one of them, we had this conversation about me helping with their sort of CTO gap. And it was a nice idea. It was a nice idea. I was in between projects, so I was like, in the end, she found a developer and made the person a co-founder. She already had a product in place. She already had something in market then. So I would say it's not impossible. I would say it depends on what you're offering. So if you're creating something that there's a need for, but you haven't got a developer to work with, you just have to either decide to learn to write the code yourself or work with someone who's willing to work with you. And it does happen, to bring your idea to life and to learn as they do that as well. If you are looking to learn, then I would look at a website called scrimba.com. They basically provide programming learning journeys for becoming a full stack developer, full stack in JavaScript with a lot of support around learning React. So I'm saying those words because there are certain skill sets that are in high demand at the moment in every part of the world. And if you have access to the platform to learn those skills, you can get work in that from Abuja or anywhere. You can work anywhere doing that. And I work on projects that are remote, and you wouldn't believe some of the people coding some very, 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 very good front ends for crypto applications. They're based out in Lebanon, they're based out in Pakistan, they're based around the world that you might not expect. And the product is being produced for a UK company. So there's no reason why distance has to affect, or access to training has to affect anyone who wants to learn programming, because the entry-level skills, so the things that are needed in companies, there are now programs that give you an easy way to learn them at home, either using video classes. Udemy does a similar thing. You can learn in your own pace. And as you do that, they even give you sections where they tell you how to interview for your first front-end job. So basically the market is global. If you have the skill, it's worth investing.
Yeah, someone asking, they mentioned the name of the site again, the website.
Indeed, what I will see is I'll put it in the chat. It's scrimba.com, and also Udemy. A lot of people have heard of udemy.com. Right.
Yeah.
The issues with these is that they're not completely free. So there is a cost involved in them. With websites for getting work, I mentioned Fiverr. I think that's how you spell it, with 2 R's.
Yeah, Fiverr.
But there are others similar. So they're all basically, once upon a time, I used elance.com. I don't know if it still exists, but I did look at it, and I did, this is way back when I was doing WordPress websites. But they're websites that will let you sign up as a user, and you would be able to say your price to do some work. I would say look at that route definitely first.
Yeah, thank you very much. Before I comment on that, I'd like to point out that the poll will be coming up right now for the viewers, attendees to, yeah, it's up now. So just take our time and responding to questions. Very useful for us to know, get a sense of who you are and what your experiences have been. So yeah, it's on to just start responding. I can see 2 persons have and all. Yeah, to backtrack on that, yeah, so the number of platforms, Fiverr, Elance, last year I wrote one on a startup called TerraWork, right? So they have a few local platforms doing that. And I think an interesting, addition for me is the person that asked the question, it wasn't clear if, like you said, it wasn't clear if it was a technical role or if the person wanted to, be technical or not. And there's interestingly been some debate on Twitter about the whole push for people to get to tech. It's been similar to, back then when parents would be like, you have to be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer. And so that's one thing to note. And like, as we all know, tech companies are normal companies, and they also need other people, right? They need other skills. They need marketers, they need accountants, they need. So whatever you have, it's valid. You can bring that to the table. You can bring that to the table. And I think also I read a recent article, like how to excel in tech without learning to code. And the author's point was, first of all, being technical is a spectrum. Like, simple as being able to use Zoom, technical, being able to use Google Suits. That's technical, right? To being able to code. So those are things to sort of like put in mind when we're thinking about tech and being techie, actually. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. So that's something. But it's good to hear that people are asking these questions and curious to know and do more. Yeah, so let's keep on filling the polls. And I have questions related to being someone's asking, how do you survive as a self-taught female programmer in the tech field? And there's a question about early or challenges as a female developer. Yeah, so curious about that peculiarity.
Very good question. So my route into working as a developer has been kind of from freelance into contracting. And so what that means is I'm working for different people, and it's all project based. So with the contracting side of things, the consulting side of things, you're joining a team of developers already. For one of the roles I did recently, I was one of the other female developers for maybe a week, and then the other female developer, I don't know what happened, but she stopped working there. So you become used to being one of the few women doing it. So this is a bit of an interesting question, because I kind of have to be quite blunt with it. It's about being able to deliver what is needed. There's not as much, it's not as fluffy as perhaps some of the other disciplines, where being able to express or being able to present something confidently, being able to assert things yourself confidently can get you ahead. If you're working on a contract or a freelance role to develop a product, develop the website on WordPress, and you've promised that it's going to have a certain feature set, you're going to support international payments, you're going to support a certain chat platform on the front end. If you don't have those skills, don't say you have the skills, because you will not get the job, you will not get the work. You'll be interviewed and you'll be asked about what you can deliver, and people look at your CV, and then you'll start the role with the expectation that there's certain things people will think you've done before. I'll use Git as an example. So without diving into the dev side of things, so Git is a platform for distributed version control. If you want to work from home, working on software products, you have to get used to using Git. It allows you to contribute to a product, save your software somewhere that everybody can see, and everyone can see your contribution to it. You can't go for a role now and say you've not used Git and get that role, end of. Even in using Git, there's certain things you develop as by virtue of doing it. There's certain skills you learn that, someone who's just started using it, that's just contributing to the first bit of code, wouldn't know. So I guess what I'm saying is, this is one of those skills gaps and needs on a global basis, that it doesn't actually matter that you're female or you're from Nigeria or you're from Hong Kong or you're from Delhi. There is a need, and the people that have the technical ability to meet that need get the work. Especially because a lot of these roles or things that you're looking at potentially from doing Udemy and Scrimmer, they're remote based. So the skills that are needed are being able to articulate in writing, being able to write down, respond to people on Slack about a problem. Some of the softer skills, you do need them, but it doesn't make you stand out necessarily more so than another developer. If another developer has the Git experience and can get that website up in 2 days or can spot a problem that's already there, they're going to get the repeat work. They're going to get their contracts extended. They're going to be the ones that get the money, basically.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. Yeah, good to hear that. It's pretty much about knowing how to do the work and having the experience, and that should help level the playing field. So there is Ekweozor asking a question. If you're down, I would like to ask this question live. But before that, I have an interesting question. I haven't seen this in my life. So Chi-chi Ekweozor is asking, I am a senior software engineer that has vast development experience, looking for a founder that needs a developer to bring their idea to life. How can I find such founders? Typically, it's always non-technical people looking for technical people, but this is a technical person looking for a non-technical person. So I think I said that because it makes sense to say it out, because I'm sure there are a ton of people that are looking for someone like that. So, but still.
I hope that by the end of this chat, all the you've got in chat makes it worth your time here. I hope that you're actually able to listen to me, because everyone's directing their answers to you in private chat on here. So yeah, no, you're in a very valuable position. I would say it sounds like that you've thought through it and you've come to the conclusion that you don't want to solve any problems without being paid for it. You want to help other people solve theirs, which is very commendable. It's like a volunteer type heart, which is noble. I would say some of the things that are helpful when you want to help to bring a product to life yourself is where your strengths are. So I knew that the programming language I was writing Ascenti in had certain strengths, and it also meant there were certain things the platform would have that would make it hard to copy. So knowing what your strengths as a developer, as someone who's brought products to life, as someone who's seen the sort of software development life cycle from beginning to end, you need to know your strengths, because you still actually need to do stuff with other people. So by virtue of doing Ascenti, by the grace of God, I know what it takes to write some software, get something online, and to deploy it. So that's the other half. You can't just write the code. You have to get it onto a web service that will keep it accessible all the time. You have to think about your security certificates so that when people go to your website, there's a padlock there. You have to think about maintaining that. So there's a lot of skills you might have as a developer, but you might also need to augment that with experience in other fields that you don't have yet. And that's what I found for myself. So you have to be prepared to learn, what happens if we've used AWS. They give startups in the UK and other parts of the world, I believe, like a $10,000 credit to use their platform. So what happens if you've come to the end of 10,000 credits and they're going to bill you and you need to turn off certain elements of your website on AWS? Are you willing to learn what it takes to stop that happening? Otherwise, they will bill you, and they will bill you until you pay, because it's AWS, it's expensive. So yeah, you kind of have to have different hats to wear, and you have to be willing to wear those hats, basically. Awesome.
This question is, I'm interested to see already in the chat box, people are dropping messages. I'm sure you're going to be hounded by so many people. That's quite a question, actually. But yeah, I hope you end up partnering with someone and building something great. Yeah, Ekweozor, I think Ekweozor is up next. Yeah, Ekweozor doesn't have technical skills. Asking. Okay, yeah, she's dropped an email. Right.
All right, thank you. Can I go now?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Daniel. I asked that for someone who is not tech savvy, who is not a developer, and wants to develop a tech product, would you advise the person to either outsource the tech side of the business or build a tech team, considering that outsourcing would be quite expensive and building a tech team also will be expensive? But if the person comes up as a co-founder, might be willing to take equity instead of a salary. So that's my question.
Very good question. Fair question as well. I've seen both. Quite a lot of the female founders I've mentioned that have raised money, they went, some of them went through the, they had the means to work with an outsourcing company, and it's actually quite common. From what I can see in the tech space, there are loads and loads, and you might be aware of this as well. There are loads and loads of companies out in India that will email you like cold emails and say, we're a tech developer, we can help you build an e-commerce platform, or we have all these skills. There's loads and loads of people out in India particularly that will offer that as a service, and people do use them. I would use the equity with a co-founder, sweat equity with a co-founder if you can, because one of the things I heard early on was that some of the people that helped fund the early, Airbnbs, some of the Square, some of the big startups that we sort of take for granted that we know now as big names, they got advised in their incubator programs to not even come to there unless they had a co-founder, because starting a company is hard. So I'm talking about a guy called Paul Graham. You can look him up. He's really well known, and he's basically the guy that co-founded, I believe, Y Combinator, which is a massive sort of startup programming in the US, and it's behind a lot of programs. I think even Stripe went through Y Combinator. Like loads of platforms, loads of tech platforms were famous ones were sort of funded through them. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. I remember Airbnb because you might have heard of it. And the founders, when they started Airbnb, they would be going off, finding people who would put their houses on their website to offer a free bed for someone, an air bed for someone. And it's now this massive platform that allows you to, turn your home into a holiday rental if you want to in parts of the world. So those guys were encouraged to find a co-founder, because with a co-founder, you can actually split the load. So I would look at that as well. If someone's willing to invest time, I would look at that.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much, Chi-chi.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, see the questions or the connects with Chi keep coming on in the chat section. Curious, while Chichi was mentioning, I just it came across, so I remember that we actually have, so if you Google Tech Cabal jobs, so we have these job boards where we feature opportunities and opportunities available in the tech space, right? So you can check that out to get to know who is hiring and which opportunities are available. Some of them are remote, some of them are full-time, but sure, you can check it out. Also, if you subscribe to TC Daily, we also have that in our newsletter, our daily newsletter. So yeah, so we also do that. We also feature jobs, available job opportunities. I'm sure my colleagues, yeah, thank you, Timmy, he's dropped the link already. So yeah, we're good. Okay, so I would like to wrap up with this. We're pretty much at the end of this event. Someone is asking, Chichi has touched on a lot of things. I think some of the questions I'm seeing have been answered already, but this recording is going to be made available, so you can actually go back and listen to it just to get, to hear some things in case you joined late. Someone's asking, what's the greatest skill a startup founder needs to succeed in tech ecosystem? All right, just use this as a way to wrap up the section.
Good question. Because I work in events all day long, I decided to make a clickable link for you guys, because I see that all the time. When people put things in the chat and you can't click on it, and it's
Thank you.
Cool. It's all right. I was on your website for a second doing that. Yeah, what was the question? I forget.
Well, it was what it. Don't worry, it was what it. What you were doing was. Yeah. So, what's the greatest skill a startup founder needs to succeed in the tech ecosystem?
Curiosity. You have to be willing to be curious. And this might help some of your listeners. Like, if you are someone who wants to solve problems, that's just how you are. You need to learn that like as soon as possible. And technologies will come and go, trends will come. All you will ever find is that you're constantly thinking about how to make it happen, how to turn a product into from an idea into reality. So I can say this having done Assenty and now looking at other things. You have to kind of be curious about learning. I'm curious about what you've learned that you can apply into a new space. So I'll give you a practical example from what I'm doing. So I learned I'm not going to do waterfall with this new product I'm working on. I'm going to make sure I do it with a focus group, with talking to users, and I'm going to learn about influencer marketing at the right time. And it's an enterprise product, so it's not influencer marketing like having people on Instagram. But there's elements of that. There's elements of what happens with, marketing products for a global audience that's happening on social media that applies to your product now. So be curious about how you can apply that to an idea. It doesn't matter that you're starting in Nigeria, same odds. You've actually got the same odds if your product solves a problem as someone in New York. You still have to sort of identify who's going to buy it, identify your sales funnel. So you have to learn all the time, basically, and be willing to apply that learning time and again.
All right, thank you. Curiosity, very important. Thank you. That's a great way to wrap it up. At this point, we've come to the end of this edition of Building from Ground Up. I'd like to say thank you to our attendees, all the questions, and also to Chi-chi, right, for joining, for sharing, a lot of insights, a lot of useful things. As we round up, my colleagues would like to drop a fun poll. I'd like to see what that looks like, actually. Yeah, and they would also be dropping. So we like to know what you think about this session, and how we can make it better. So there will be a post-event survey. So you can, okay, it's about Ascenti. Let's go. In what year was Ascenti launched? Okay. Where did Chichi first get the idea for Ascenti? A wedding. Okay. Can you guess which of these Nigerian cities Chichi lived in before relocated to UK? Okay, it's a lot of love for Abuja here. Wow. Okay.
I need to hear the answer. I think some of them are going to be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, sure. So while you're feeling it, let me just do a few post events rituals, closing rituals. Okay, so yeah, my colleague Sultan has dropped in the post events survey form for you to feel. Yeah, you are still feeling interested. A lot of people going for Abuja, interesting. Then Port Harcourt. Okay, so all right. So the next session, while we're filling survey or the fun pool, the next session of Building from Ground Up will be happening same place next week. We're going to be talking to the co-founder, CEO of Helicareer, which is Ire Aderinokun. The link will be posted in the chats. Yeah, it's already, you can see it. For you to register. Yeah, that's going to be a very insightful conversation also. And once again, I'd like to reiterate that this series, Building from Ground Up, is powered by the UK Nigerian Tech Hub in partnership with Tech Cabal. And within Tech Cabal, this event was organized by Tech Cabal Insights. It's our data research and intelligence unit, which provides actionable and instructive, useful insights for founders, investors, tech companies, regulators on and off the continent. So this has been a very great session. I'm sure we're still filling the polls, the fun poll. And like I mentioned earlier, we post job opportunities, Tech About Daily. It's one of the most, if not the most comprehensive roundup of what's happening in the tech ecosystem in Africa. So TC Daily, I'm sure the link will be posted in the chat room section for you to sign up. And also you should check out UK Nigerian Tech Hub on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. Okay, let's go back and see how much progress we made in terms of the fun poll. Where are we? Okay, when does this end? My colleagues, okay, I see clearly 2016 winning, conference winning, Abuja winning, the fact called Zero Love for Ibadan. I don't know why, but I think we can. What's this book? I was asking, was this book created by Ascenti? That's a good one. That's a good one.
That's right. That's why we don't. That's why the platform is kind of slowly getting retired, because the lockdown made things like Zoom's polling platforms and other platforms.
Yeah,
they made it obsolete a little bit.
Yeah, and if you want to, for those of you who had questions that weren't answered, you can always reach out to Chi-chi on LinkedIn. Yeah, reach out to her. She'll be happy to answer your questions. And yeah, the poll has been stopped, so I'm going to share the results. I'm going to let Chi-chi comment on it. Yeah, so have you seen the results?
I can see them. Actually.
Okay, well, let me share them. Okay,
I can see them.
All right, you can just comment on it. Share.
So the only wrong answer was the Abuja. I've never lived in Abuja in my life. I've never actually stepped on there in my life. I fly through it, but I've never actually been there. I grew up in Ibadan, and the other two answers are correct.
Yeah, wow. Shout out to people at Ibadan. I'm not sure why people are associated with Abuja, right? I'm not sure. Maybe you should.
I've never.
Okay. Yeah, maybe they're calling you in Abuja. So. All right, thank you everyone for joining. This has been very, very insightful. Thank you everyone. Looking forward to see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you, Chi-chi.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much, Daniel. It was lovely speaking to you. Take care.
Yeah.